Hello, my name is Gilbert Landolt. I live at Des Moines Catholic Worker Community here in Des Moines, Iowa. And we run a hospitality house, and I'm also the president of Veterans of Peace for the Des Moines and Central Iowa chapter, number 163.
If the enemies of hope are finally victorious in this nation, the poison of violence will become not only the language of power, but the language of opposition, and those who resist here today with nonviolence are the last thin line of defense between a civil society and its disintegration.
I've been out of the military now for 2.5 years, and I've been speaking out ever since. And today, I just felt that it's time for me to take a stand.
Our goal is basically nationwide and around the world is to try to educate people on the true cost of war. And I'm not talking necessarily about dollars and cents and money. I'm talking about the cost of like PTSD, divorce rates, suicide, drug and alcohol abuse. There's just a lot of other things that go along with war. And also the damage that we do to other people and other societies, and the problems that we create for them.
And you never can tell what will trigger somebody to say, I think I've had enough. I'm one of the ones that finally said I'd had enough. But you never can tell, these men and women that are coming out of the gate, you never can tell when one sign may strike them in the heart and may cause them to have a crisis of conscience. A crisis of conscience that will demand that they stop any sort of association with this assassin drone program. So I want to thank you all for your...
We try to get out in the public, and we'll do some protesting right now. And we're kind of in the middle of a campaign that we started over a year ago with the Iowa Air National Guard here in Des Moines, out at the Des Moines Airport, who is switching over. They had F-16 fighter jets. They got rid of them, and they're bringing in a drone command center. And so this center will be controlling drones that are will be flown, killing people and doing damage, like in Afghanistan and Somalia and these type of things. And now it looks like we're moving into Africa. So that's some of the things we do. We'll go out and post signs and protest and do civil disobedience on occasion, where we'll block an entry to the Air Guard. That's one of the things that we do.
I haven't seen my son for 6 years.
What do you think it adds to the credibility of the interwar movement to have veterans stepping forward and saying, you know what, that's not the way to do things?
I think that when veterans speak out against war and some of the insanities that the United States get wrapped up into, and this is true, we have veterans peace groups in Europe also, and so we're getting voices from different areas. We have a chapter in Vietnam, so when people speak out that are veterans, people do actually stop and listen. Actually, when we go out and do something, we do get interviews with newspapers, on television stations. So we do get coverage, gets the word out, which is actually what we're out there trying to do. We're trying to make a point and educate people.
Essentially being in that country for 5 years and watching the infrastructure degrade instead of improve, it was kind of a sharp realization so that there was nothing that was actually going on benefiting the people of Iraq by any means. In fact, consistent night raids, checkpoints, and harassment was the daily routine for what we were doing to the people of Iraq. And I don't...
In Afghanistan, Iraq, and that, this is about oil for the big corporations, and we need to kind of wean ourselves off oil to start with, but so these are big corporations for minerals and this type of thing, and that people are used as just pawns in a big game. That you're basically helping support the corporations. One thing that I think all members of Veterans of Peace would agree to is that to try to, if you ever get the opportunity to talk to a young person that's thinking about going in the military or has any thoughts of it at all is paint a more realistic picture, as opposed to what they get. If they go to a racetrack here in Iowa, for example, to watch a car race or something, or they go to a softball game at the state softball tournament. They have the military there with all these different games that they can play and glorifying the U.S. warrior and this type of thing. And the number of people that come back out of combat right now, out of Afghanistan, Iraq, the numbers are with PTSD, or even the VA will tell you, there's 60-70% of them have PTSD. So it's just good to maybe help one person, and so you never know. But we work on that constantly with the Veterans of Peace.
A number of the people who are affiliated with Veterans for Peace have, faced challenges in their lifetime, and just seeing people like Gil be present at many of our events or our witnesses, vigils, things like that, events and activities. It shows where your real commitment is, I think, when you put your words into action. And Gil is someone who does that.
In addition to his work as the vets organizer for Vets for Peace, he's also a Des Moines Catholic worker, and so he spends most of his days helping to feed the poor of this neighborhood, poor people of color here in Iowa that don't have enough food to eat. They might be homeless. They don't have access to medical care. They don't have insurance. And Gil's disabled himself, but he's put a lot of time and effort into his daily life to help the most least fortunate people in our society, both by organizing against war and militarism, things that are draining resources away from our society that should be used for the common good, and also providing direct services to some of those impacted people. So he's a stand-up guy. He's a leader in our community. He's a great friend. He's a trusted organizer, and we're so blessed in this town to have him here and his presence here.
I've been around Veterans of Peace actually since about 2007, and what got me started was the Iraq War, and it's just something that I finally couldn't come to grips with, and I decided I had to do something. So I started coming around the Catholic worker again, and doing some vigiling, protesting, and running into some people that were in Veterans of Peace, and so I decided that that was something that I thought I'd like to get into and get a chapter going, because we didn't have any chapters at all in Des Moines at that time, or in the state of Iowa. So I was kind of raised in a military type family. My dad was a POW for 2.5 years during World War II. My brother was a combat veteran in Vietnam. I served on DMZ in South Korea during the Vietnam War. We were in a hazardous duty zone, and I seen a number of things there that I just couldn't go along with necessarily. And the toll that it took on my own personal family and myself, I battled with it for probably 30 years, still trying to be like with the American Legion, this type of thing, who still beats a war drum. And I just couldn't find justification for that. I had to find another way of trying to express myself. And so finally I ran into the Veterans of Peace group and heard about them, and a few friends here in Des Moines that said they would back me on doing the work that it would take to get a chapter going here in Iowa. And so we now have 3 chapters here in Iowa. We have one here in Des Moines, one in Iowa City, and one in Cedar Rapids. But it's just, I feel that war is not the answer. That's to be sure. And so I try to do everything I can possibly do to try to help rid the world of war and violence.